I'm just interested. Like, I don't know if I'm being too poetic in this, but it does feel like every example you've given from this, the Stratford one, it does feel very Prince's Trust-esque. Like you find someone who's talented has a bit of belief or faith behind them, and they're given the opportunity. Or like the Stratford, you're actually going and again, it's building those relationships, which you will never see it written down of I managed to improve the money by X, but everybody knows that those things are really impactful, like long term. It's only maybe 20 years later you find out. Do you think that has been the thing that's influenced you repeatedly, or am I just reading way too much into it?
No, I think you've hit on something really close to my heart, really, as well as my head. It's, when I've had the pleasure of meeting His Royal Highness several times, and at one point I asked, who was there at the beginning of the Prince's Trust? And he said, me and a drum. Nobody, that's like one of the best lines ever. I mean, this guy is, if he wasn't in the role, I mean, he's a leader. I think he gave his first sustainability talk in the early 70s. He has a vision that, and the Prince's Trust has played out. So from him banging on that drum, slowly played out. And then when I think about Attic or even working at Coca-Cola, if you can hit that drum, if you can kind of, get other people to walk to the same drum beat or dance to the same drum beat, then all of a sudden then that multiplied effect can be very powerful. And so I do think, when I look back, that there is you do feel alone in the very beginning. You do feel kind of like, you're in the temple, Coca-Cola, and I'm walking through the front door on my first day. I'm actually thinking, what's my drumbeat here? How would I even start something that other people might think is attractive in the sense of, I like what you're doing, keep doing it, I'll support it. And over time, if that works out, and if that's a great idea in the beginning, of course, you can find ways to kind of grow that. So it's super interesting you've picked up on that, because not many people do, Mustafa, but I've always thought that from the very beginning of the Prince's Trust. It's a great way of thinking, courtesy of His Royal Highness.
Absolutely. Sorry, Ryan, I've got like a roll of questions in my head, so you better interrupt me quick. No, just one last thing. In terms of the applied activities that you used to do at Coca-Cola, the big thing, especially in Silicon Valley and tech in general, is actually having the frameworks of activity. So the design sprint model, where day one you do this, you do this. Did you formalize like the specific activities that you would do with the creative folks you might find in Kosovo or like South America, or did you just invite them in and give them a design brief? Like, what was the applied day-to-day things that you would do to incubate the sort of talent?
Yeah, there was a combination of course, the book had been written in design thinking, and Tim Brown and friends at IDEO had sort of published that, so it was already out there. There's nothing new. But in terms of actually penetrating large organizations, it feels like one brick at a time. So when I say a brick, I refer to one business unit at a time. So we might fly down to a Latin American market, or over to some of our African business units, into Asia, into Europe, and conduct 2-3 day workshop. And we would present ourselves at Coca-Cola Design as the facilitator of those workshops. So workshops go on all the time, but maybe it's also facilitation. How are we going to run the workshop, and who do we invite? So part of that was us trying to sort of penetrate the organization slowly but surely, but also at the same time, educate the organization in new ways of working, bring new people into the room, and all of a sudden then, teaching them some of our methodologies with a view that they could run a workshop next time. And they could, steer it themselves, so that, again, the multiplying effect. But it wasn't a grand kind of like, turn on a light switch and everybody's moving into human-centered design overnight.
Yeah.
No, it was, and actually, so ground up from brand teams who do the, kind of product and strategy work from top down. So C-suite conversations, trying to really speak to our CMO and CEO at the time, and really kind of like, educate them around the power of this way of thinking across the organization, across the culture. So it's no longer, we don't, I think when I arrived, the Coca-Cola Design was effectively a packaging team. when I left, I was glad to see that we were involved in the conversations at the very start of innovation, R&D, product design, culture, marketing, sure, packaging, absolutely, but content creation. So the design team then was a much more holistic group of, it was a way of being rather than a packaging label department, which I saw it when I arrived.